anybody who's done any studies of Josephus, if we read Antiquities or War of the Jews, Josephus he's just invaluable to us. We don't know who wrote 1st and 2nd Maccabees, probably different authors, Jewish authorship, we don't know. But I'm so glad for the writings of Josephus on a lot of different levels. So let's get a few facts about Josephus, because this is the guy who wrote, these are his two main books. The Jewish War, and that's the war with the Romans. And then the Jewish Antiquities. And Antiquities is a history of the Jews it's really the history of the world from a Jewish perspective. Let's put it like that. And it's for a Roman audience. So let me go over that again. Josephus, we'll meet Josephus in a minute, but his books, the two that we're really interested in, would be the Jewish War, the war between the Jews and Rome, and then Antiquities. And Antiquities is kind of a world history from a Jewish perspective. It's written for the Roman audience. Well, let's meet Josephus. Josephus is a Jew born in Jerusalem. And again, he's a historian. So when we talk about the intertestamental period, I told you up front, 10 o'clock this morning, one of our sources was going to be Josephus. Josephus was also a Roman soldier. And he surrendered at this city, Jotapata, in AD 67. And he surrendered to a Roman general named Vespasian. My father-in-law used to tell a story about that surrender. And how Josephus became a prisoner of war for a while. And I've been unable to verify this story in modern literature. I know he read it someplace. I wish I had a source to it. But here's the story, that Josephus and these other Jewish soldiers are pinned in this building. And so they decide to do what the people at Masada would do a few years later. What did the people at Masada do? Yeah, mass suicide, that's right. The men would kill their wives and children and themselves, and they draw lots. And I've been to Masada, and two women and 4 children survived that. I believe that's right. Might be 4 women and 2 children. But when the Romans finally got to the top of Masada, when they left, 900 plus people had died. But so here Josephus says, well, I don't want to be taken captive. You don't want to be taken. Let's draw lots. And so the lot fell down. Everybody's dead but 2 guys. And Josephus, this other fellow, kills himself, and Josephus just walks out and surrenders. Gave himself to the Romans. So I've heard that. Have you heard that, Terry?
I've heard that same story.
Yeah,
I have too.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've read it somewhere.
I cannot find that. I find it on the internet, but I can't find a source that I trust. But nevertheless, Josephus, for sure, is a Jewish soldier, and he's in...
I saw it on the History Channel, so it has to be true.
Well, then that's
It was right after Ancient Aliens.
Now, were the aliens grays, or were they, because this depends.
No, they were the reptilians.
Oh, they were reptilian. Well, everybody knows they live in the center of the earth, and they helped us with all this technology back when. Sometimes I watch that and I go, am I living in bizarro world, or what is it? So Josephus surrenders, and Josephus then becomes the confidant of Vespasian, because he predicts that Vespasian will become emperor someday. And lo and behold, Vespasian becomes emperor, and so he takes Josephus under his wing, and Josephus becomes a court historian. And Josephus works under 3 different Roman emperors. Vespasian, Titus, and I think Domitian is the 3rd. So he is, this guy, boy, we really want to pay attention to what he has to say. The Jews hated him, of course, and saw him as a despicable traitor, because he took the first name Flavius. Well, isn't that interesting? Flavius. And he took that Roman name from the name of Vespasian. So he became a Roman in his thinking, even though he was a Jewish man. And so this didn't ingratiate him to the Jews at all. So he works under 3 emperors, and what a period of history. Can you imagine Here he's going to see the fall of Jerusalem. He's going to see the Romans spread out. He's going to see the retreat of the Jews as far as influence. He's going to see some amazing history. And he writes these wonderful histories. Now, one thing about Josephus that we want to know is that he mentions Jesus not once but twice. Now, one of those quotations is in dispute. And I've studied that, understand that. But when he's talking about James as a leader in the church, and he wants to single out this James, he calls him James, the brother of Jesus. And that's an interesting quote. And I think that probably the other quote's been tampered with, but nevertheless he does mention by name Jesus. That's really important. And now so Josephus, we talk about Josephus, and you hear his name, and somebody talks about him as a historian and mentions his impact on what we know about the time between the Testaments. Now we know who he is, at least something about him. This is Biblical Archaeology Review. This is a young archaeologist here from a college. And this magazine, January, February 2015, so it's very contemporary. This is really good on Josephus mentioning Jesus and Tacitus mentioning Jesus. And I was just so glad to get this. It's about a year old now, but boy, that edition is really, really good. And it's got a really good article on Josephus. Now, having met him, let's talk about some God intervening when things get bad. So if you want to headline your notes, just occasions where God acts after, in his sovereignty, allows things to really get bad. The time we're going to preview, this time between the Testaments, and we'll start tonight and tomorrow. You'll be surprised at how fast this will go because we've got so much of this out of the way. But the time between the Testaments is a time of ferment and change. A culture that has been dominant for 3,000 years is about to pass. That's this ancient Near Eastern culture. Josephus will be our main source of material when we get into these discussions. Now, I know he doesn't say much about the latter Persian period, but the rest of it's really good. Now, would you make this note that God sometimes pauses in his dealings with mankind? God sometimes pauses in his dealings with mankind. In spite of what my charismatic and Pentecostal friends say, sometimes God does pause. Let me give you an illustration of that. How many periods in history are there when God, through the hands of people, works miracles? What is the first period in history, human history, where God, through a person, worked miracles? Who would that be? Moses. Well, how long from Eden to Moses? I don't know. It's a long time. What's the next period of history where God, through people, worked miracles? Elijah and Elisha. What's the last period in human history where God, through the hands of people, see, God can do whatever he wants, and we don't say, well, God didn't do it. No. But through the hands of people, well, that would be Jesus and the apostles. 3 periods of history, totaling 230, 240 years. And that number's up for grabs. But that's all of human history from Eden all the way down to Jesus. And I think beyond, I think that's it. And my charismatic and Pentecostal friends, well, Hebrews 1:8, Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yes, that's right, but his methodology may change. Hebrews 1:8 has to do with his nature, not his methodology. So I'm not being mean or necessarily unnecessarily critical, but let's note that God sometimes does pause. He doesn't always do things the way he occasionally does things. So here we're going to have a pause in history, about 400 years. Now, somebody has said this, and it's not true, that God had nothing to say from Malachi to Matthew because of the sinfulness of man. What? Has man always been sinful? Yeah, from the get-go. So that's not the reason there was a pause. Here's a better answer. God pauses before he reveals himself fully in Jesus. Now think with me for just a minute. How does God reveal himself to us? There are three ways. Nature, the Word, and the living Word. This is how we know God. Nature, it'll take you so far. The Word, but then Hebrews 1, then the full revelation of God is found in Jesus Christ. So God reveals himself. Now, have you ever noticed how that when a speaker pauses, it gives emphasis to what he's going to say? When there's a pause. Let me use an example that's, if in fighting you pause, we use what's called broken rhythm, broken time.